Welcome everybody to the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing, July 11th, 2023. We have with us in person Joyce Giffra, member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, our newest member, Tom Kempner, and thank you for joining us. Luke Ferrin is here in person, recently reappointed. Thank you for your continued service.
Thank you for having me.
And via Zoom, we have Julia McCormick. We have here also via Zoom, Chick Voorhees, our environmental consultant, and in person, our legal counsel, Jeffrey Blinkoff, and our village planner, Mr. Alex Wallach. So let's begin. First, we'll motion to open the meeting, the public hearing, July 11th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
I think we can start with adjournments. Maybe that might be the most efficient way to proceed, so anybody who's listening to this and expecting a hearing on a certain matter knows that it won't be heard tonight. The first request for adjournment is case number 3144, Stephen Hickey, 1377 Meadow Lane. The applicant requests an adjournment to September. And Alex, what date might it be in September?
So the board hadn't formally scheduled a meeting that far. Under the normal procedure, the second Tuesday would be the 12th, and the fourth Thursday would be the 28th.
Okay, so why don't I motion to adjourn case number 3144, Stephen Hickey, 1377 Meadow Lane, to September 12th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
With nothing in August?
Not for Stephen Hickey.
Oh, okay, sure, yes, approved.
How is your vote? Julia, can you hear us?
Yes, I said aye.
And then we have a request from the applicant in case number 3153, Smithtown Partners, 40 Meadow Lane, to request an adjournment to August 8th. Jeffrey, is that our meeting, August 8th?
Yes.
I just want to double check.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'll motion to accept the applicant's request to adjourn to August 8th in case number 3153, Smithtown Partners. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that's unanimous. Then we have a request for an adjournment in case number 3160, Gary Flanagan, 20 Hillcrest Lane. The applicant requests an adjournment to our public hearing August 8th, 2023. I'll motion to accept the request for adjournment in case number 3160 to August 8th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mark, did you possibly miss Eiffel residence, case number 3156? That was also requested for adjournment.
Yes, in case number 3156, Eiffel Residence, 2020 Meadow Lane, the board received a request from the applicant for an adjournment. The board agrees that the matter needs to be adjourned and will be seeking confirmation of our understanding that the tennis court has been brought into conformity through an updated survey. And the board would also want confirmation that the existing driveway gates are in compliance with code. So we would like to motion to adjourn case number 3156, Eiffel Residence, 2020 Meadow Lane, until such time. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
In case number 3164, Robert Kornstein and Sherry Gottesman, we have a request from the applicant to adjourn to the public hearing August 8th, 2023. I will motion to accept the applicant's request to adjourn. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor of accepting the applicant's request for an adjournment in case number 3164 to August 8th, 2023? Aye.
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 And Julia, that's yes? Okay.
Yes.
In case number 3155-1750, Waterview LLC, 1750 Meadow Lane. The board would make a motion to adjourn this matter. Yeah, let me finish the motion. The board would make a motion to adjourn case number 3155-1750 Waterview LLC until such time as board members have received the materials associated with the application. But we can hold off, and John, if you'd like
Okay.
to speak to
Yes, my name is John Bennett. I represent the applicant. I have for the board the affidavits. The original is the affidavits of mailing, and the different and the affidavits of posting. Even though this board's position has been that you need these to make an adjournment, that's not what the case law says. But nevertheless, I'm submitting the original affidavit of mailing and the original affidavit of posting, copies of which have been previously submitted. I object wholeheartedly and on absolute solid legal grounds on this attempt to adjourn this matter over my objection. I did submit by hand delivery and email, as well as with copies to the client, the entire team that has traveled to come to present this application, as well as copies to the mayor and to board council and the village attorney. This application was duly noticed for a public hearing this evening. Last evening, we were advised that the board intends to adjourn this application as incomplete. The pending application is in no way incomplete and has in fact been on file with this board for several months. The application seeking variances in a wetlands permit was originally filed on February 16, 2023. After that submission and at the specific request of the building department, certain of the plans were revised to reflect the most recent lot area for the subject property, as shown on the survey prepared by Squires Holden, Weisenbacher, and Smith. In addition, inasmuch as the plans were already being revised, the applicant took the opportunity, in an action which objectively by law should be appreciated by the board, to amend the submitted plans to impose an imposition of additional mitigation measures by way of expansion of a scenic easement on the subject property. By correspondence dated May 16th, 2023, almost 2 months ago, the applicant submitted an explanation to the board of the modifications made to the submitted materials and amended plans with the board. The application was thereafter properly noticed in the Southampton Press, certified mailings made to surrounding property owners, and a public hearing notice was posted on the property. Despite the fact that all materials required of the applicant had been on file for almost 2 full months, and the applicant's experts have prepared and traveled to present the application to the board this evening, we are advised on the eve of the published and advertised application that it's incomplete, inasmuch as certain board members were purportedly unable to obtain copies of the materials that were, again, have been submitted for 2 months. That's not incomplete. That's not an incomplete application.
But by the way, I know it's written on the agenda that it's being adjourned as incomplete. That is not why I was
Okay,
adjourning.
let me finish, if I may, but I understand. But, well, that's what the agenda says.
I understand.
The application is fully complete. Indeed, the applicant had submitted the following materials by correspondences dated February 16th and May 16th, 2023, including materials that not even specifically required by the village code, or even the more extensive list of requirement by the board demands. We submitted the zoning denial letter, the application including a rider, the disclosure form, the owner's authorization, the short form EAF, correspondence dated May 19th confirming that the authorized signatory for 1750, we submitted the certificate of occupancy, the deed, prior zoning board of appeals decisions related to the subject property, 3 separate decisions, full-size and reduced sets of architectural plans prepared by Stella Montrani. There are 6 sheets, full-size and reduced sets of landscape plans prepared by LaGuardia Design. There are 6 sheets, a site plan prepared by Squires Holden, April 12th, 2023, full and reduced sets of an illustrative site plan, 2021 aerial overhaul and overlay and site plan comparison plan prepared by InterSign, dated March 28th, and a statement from Lee Wishour from the Woods Hole Group, dated March 15th, 2023. The application is decidedly, and as a matter of law, not incomplete. The application was accepted for filing, calendared, and properly noticed. Supplementing an application to expand upon opposed mitigation and in response to requests made by the Village Building Department, all of which took place 2 months ago and prior to the noticing of the application. All of this does not make an application incomplete. The legal rights of an applicant stem from both substantive and procedural rights, ladies and gentlemen. Ignoring an applicant's procedural rights based upon a clearly and demonstrably incorrect statement that the application is incomplete is a violation of the applicant's right
John,
to do.
I don't mean to
I'm going to
interrupt
finish.
you.
I'll be done in
Finish,
30
but you keep
seconds.
saying incomplete, and
Okay.
I understand that that's on the agenda. That was not the reason for our adjournment.
Okay, well, on a basic fairness level, it's disrespectful of a property owner and a taxpayer's right to petition this board and have an application heard with thorough, proper, and fair administration. To have an application that was filed in February, supplemented in large part at the request of the building department in May, over 2 months ago, have my team ready. People are reasonably allowed to rely on the proper administration of the village, which, if it was being properly administered, this hearing would be proceeding. So I object. My team is here ready to present, and I demand that we be able to present, because there's absolutely no reason why you cannot hear this. I don't expect for one second that this would be a one-night hearing. As a matter of fact, Mr. Kriegsman is here representing a neighbor to the west who has called me up and said, I'd like to talk to you about some of these things. I'd like to understand what your application is about. And I certainly said, yes, we're going to proceed tonight, but I will specifically ask that the matter get put over for you to hear our entire application, and so that you're fully informed. So I'm not trying to cram anything down anybody's throat. What I'm trying to do is move this process along and have the board generally, and board's Wetlands Council, Mr. Voorhees, generally be familiarized with the application. There's absolutely no reason why this shouldn't proceed. I was told by the building department that the board, some board members were concerned because they didn't get their information in one packet. Really? Come on.
Don't assume that that's a
Okay,
fact.
well, what possible reason could you have for us, with a properly noticed application that's been on file for almost a half a year, with my team ready, for us not to proceed this evening? I mean, and it's got to be something that makes sense. It's got to be something, I want to proceed. You have to demonstrate how I'm putting you at some disadvantage by not proceeding, and particularly in light of the fact that I've already told you, based upon a conversation with a neighbor and her counsel's ability to want to see the presentation so they can more fully understand it, that I'm going to request an adjournment after the presentation of the case. How, in good Lord's name, are you prejudiced?
Is that
I've stopped talking.
okay? So, do you want to have a seat?
No, I want to hear how you're
We're not.
prejudiced.
It's not a dialogue with us. Okay, please sit down. We'll discuss it
Oh,
amongst
fair enough.
ourselves.
Fair
I have
enough.
an adjournment motion. We can talk about it.
Okay.
We've heard you. I'm open to legal counsel. My first concern is we have more in common with what council just said than he recognizes right now, okay? This board does want to properly administer, you know, every case before us, okay? We do have a guideline that materials should be distributed to board members on the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting, so that board members have a chance to review those materials and prepare for the meeting. Okay? For whatever reason, those materials were not available last Thursday. When I went to pick up my materials, they were not available. When other board members went to pick up their materials, they were not available. As of today, I know for a fact there are at least 3 board members who were unable to pick up materials by the deadline or review any of the materials that are part of this application. So we want to properly administer cases, but the board feels as if preparing for these board meetings is essential to that proper administration. We made every attempt we could to prevent the applicant from appearing here unnecessarily, saving their, you know, time, effort, and expense. We made phone calls. We tried to prevent them from coming. So now what do we do? Because the board is not in the best position right now to hear the case. If we are not receiving materials by a deadline, why have that deadline if we're not going to adhere to it? There's a purpose to it. I'm not
You did
asking for
receive
you to
them.
respond.
You
I'm
did
not
receive
asking
them.
for you to respond.
Well, you're misstating something.
I'm not asking for
You
you to
did
respond.
receive
them.
And I'm
Actually,
not
Mr. Bennett-
asking for you to interrupt me. I'm not inviting you to interrupt me. This is simply a question among the board members. You've had your sense. You don't know if I've misstated something or not. Okay?
Excuse me, Mr. Bennett. First of all, you've just changed what you said, okay? The board, Mr. Bennett, you, I'm asking, Mr. Bennett, can I speak now? Because you interrupted twice, and now I'm speaking.
Are you think you're gonna raise your voice?
Yes,
so that-
because you're not allowing me
No,
to speak,
the
so I'm going to
mistake
do
was
that, and I'll
made
keep
that the
talking until you
materials
stop.
were not
Mr.
available,
Bennett,
and
you're
they
the-
were.
They were not available, Mr. Bennett, and your letter is incorrect, and I'll point you to your letter. In your letter where it says that they were on file with this board, they were not on file with this board.
That's,
They were filed with the
Ridiculous.
village building department. Isn't that where they were filed?
where does everything get filed for the zoning board of appeals? I've been
Are
doing
you
this for
asking
40
me?
years.
Then you
Maybe
would know
you
they're
don't know
filed
where
with-
things get filed.
you
I
raising
do.
your
They
voice
get
now?
filed with the building
So you're
department.
raising your
Well,
voice now.
you did too. What's good for the
They were
goose?
filed with the village building department, sir.
That's
And I
absurd.
it's not absurd,
Yes, it's totally
Mr.
absurd.
Bennett.
Where do
and-
things
and-
get filed?
With this board, they're filed with the village building department. I think the point that was being made
I'm not talking. You can finish.
I
I'll
wanted
give
you
my
to finish.
permission.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
The point that was being made was that the board wants to be able to be prepared to proceed. The point that was being made is that the village board, as I understand it, picks up hard copies of materials on the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting. I assume the board wants to review them to be able to proceed in an educated fashion.
May I
And
respond
that's,
to you?
can I
You
just
asked me a
finish?
question.
Can I just finish?
Certainly.
I did raise my voice. Shouldn't have. But I think that the idea, the overall idea, is that you want to be able to present your full case. The board wants to be able to hear your full case. The board wants to be able to ask educated questions about that case. I don't think you disagree that there are many aspects of relief being sought here. There's 13 of them. Well, there's 13 that are listed. There's 13 of them. So, Mr. Chairman, I think it's up to the board. The question is, what is the most appropriate fashion in which to proceed? It's up to the board. I understand Mr. Bennett's point. I think Mr. Bennett's point is, let us start off, and then it'll be put down the road anyway. And it's up to the board in terms of is that the most beneficial use of the board's time in terms of the educational information that you have going into the hearing? And it's up to the board. I understand your point, sir, but I also think that the board's concern is that they haven't had the time to properly review the materials.
So
And
what-
I'm not disagreeing, I just want to clarify one other thing. I'm not disagreeing with anything that you've put in here in terms of when it was filed with the building department. Absolutely. I get it. I've read it. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you put a lot of time into it. I'm sure your team put a lot of time into it.
That's not the
That's,
issue.
and I agree with you. I think the issue is the board wants to have the appropriate amount of time to reflect on the huge amount of effort that went into this to be able to proceed.
And what better way for the board to initially familiarize themselves with the application, particularly when the application is not going to be closed this evening, for the applicant to present the matters? Because I will tell you that that's typically the way this board has functioned in the past. Many times, it was the first time that board members, all of them, looked at the file, was the night of the hearing, and constantly I would get the refrain, "I'm glad you were able to present it to us because we then understand it fully," and actually it educates our questions down the road. I must say, and it did make me angry, because I think sometimes anger is justifiable, that I've been practicing before this board since 1982, and every single piece of paper is filed with the building department. Why is it filed with the building department? Because the building department, the building inspector, who under the case law is the one who is initially charged with the determination of what the code is and whether or not things apply with the code, is supposed to and always has reviewed the matters before they go to the zoning board of appeals. Now, you've even solidified that by requiring that the building inspector look at this and issue a turn-down letter, which was never the case in the past, because the better practitioners knew when they needed relief, and the building inspector accepted that, and it worked very well. But now you have a situation where, in order to get before this board, I have to submit the things to the building department, which I did first in February and then in May. If internally there's some issue with those documents getting distributed, that issue shouldn't be visited on the applicant. And I would ask you to, and just in terms of fairness, to understand that. Why should the applicant suffer from some internal issue? That's not right.
We really made every attempt for the applicant not to suffer, and that's why we were trying to get word to you not to come. But
That
please,
doesn't work, though.
The dialogue that I want to have right now is not with you, if you don't mind, but it's with the
Certainly.
other board members. We can arrive at what we think is our best way to proceed. What process do we want to follow? I set forth a motion because I think there's a reason why we have materials submitted. If they're not distributed, to us or not made available to us, yes, that's an unfortunate occurrence for everybody. But I'll hear from whoever else wants to speak to it.
I understand Mr. Bennett's frustration on behalf of his applicant in this situation. However, I think in order for this board to continue to function effectively and expeditiously, there's a reason why we have certain guidelines about the submission dates for materials. And if we make an exception in this case, then we're setting a dangerous precedent down the road, and I think we just have
It's
to
not, really, please,
enforce
let us
this
talk.
as it's outlined.
I agree. Agree with the frustration of the team. Many of us were not given the time to review your drawing and your package and your submittal. The people to talk to are our elected trustees about that, and hopefully some of the process issues that this board faces and the other land use boards face with the building department can get remedied by community input. But we are not prepared, and we have not reviewed your package. And I actually think it would be unfair to your client and put them at a unfair disadvantage to hear the John Bennett version of this application before we get a crack at it.
I
So-
don't even understand what you're saying.
Sure. Okay, so notwithstanding your frustration, I will second Mark's motion to adjourn.
Julia, did you wanna?
I don't have anything more to add than what Luke has already said and Joyce has already said at this time.
Me too. I don't have anything to add to my colleagues.
Can I ask then, if I may, I put in an application in February, I put in an application in, amended it at the request of the building department and add some other mitigation in May. Why is it, if I may, that you members are in a position of not having that material? Because you understand why I did every single thing that I'm supposed to do.
John, you did everything right,
That's all.
as always.
Okay.
You did
But
everything
I
perfect.
didn't-
I just want to make sure that
You
everybody
did
has
everything perfectly,
I-
and
I
no one
will
is
say-
impugning your handling of your case.
That's all I need.
The question that you have about why members didn't receive documents is the question we have. You know the right people to talk to.
We truly have more in common with a lot of the statements you've made as far as how to properly process applications, okay? And we want that very much for everybody. We want a system that is the most efficient, fair system, you know, that we can have. I think what you're hearing from the board members is that our opinion, you know, which will, you know, carry forward to a vote, is that the most efficient process for us is to be able to review materials ahead of time. I've also spoken, so you know, I've spoken with Chick Voorhees, who will be reaching out to you in the near future because he found substantial inconsistencies in a cursory review between.
That's not what he said to me. He said he had some questions.
Okay,
He didn't characterize them that way.
well,
Anyway,
so, now, his dialogue with you and other representatives of the applicant, I think will again streamline the process, because he needs more information. That information that he obtains will help us, you know, to understand the application better. So again, we don't think the application is ready for our public hearing. That's what our vote is. You can,
just one thing, if I may,
Yeah.
okay? The proper procedure then, as opposed just to a collegial manner amongst the board, this board, which I've had since 1982, and applicants, was for someone, one of you members, which has happened in the past, to call me up and say, John, your application's complete, but for some reason, we never got it. We never got it. And reasonable minds can differ about it. I think you'd be well served to hear tonight, but reasonable minds can differ. We would like you to adjourn it. And at that point, I would have been sympathetic and have said, even though not necessarily maybe agreeing, let me call my client. I've got a request from a board member. For some reason, even though we've had this stuff filed first in February and then in May, they would like me to consent to an adjournment. I would have said, you know, that's comity, that's being collegial, that's trying to be
So let
helpful.
me ask you
But
this,
I never got that
just to
call.
follow up
Instead,
on that.
Mark, I got to think application incomplete,
have,
which is
have-
impugning my representation of my client, which is not accurate, as everyone's acknowledged. So that's just not the way to go about things. That's all I'm saying.
As I said, we have more to agree upon than perhaps at this moment you're acknowledging. I agree with you. It shouldn't have been written as if it was incomplete. Okay, I didn't write that. Okay, our concern was we didn't have the materials in time.
So call me up,
Okay,
one of you, and say that to me, and I'm like,
we don't.
okay.
So
I
my
understand.
question to you is just for the record, had we made that phone call last Thursday, would you have been fine with that if we had said, hey, listen, it's Thursday before the meeting, the board members don't have the materials to review. Are you okay with adjourning?
I'll
Would
tell you
have
what I
said-
would have done if I got that call on Thursday. I would have made damn sure the next thing that I did was, whether it was both going to you electronically and coming to your homes, whatever, that you had those materials. That's what should have, so the second you knew you were having some sort of structural or functional problem, if you had reached out to me, I would have immediately remedied it, because that's an understandable concern. That's an understandable concern. But this eve of the, I mean, you're struggling with something else, the last meeting. Twice it happened on one of mine, that's just being adjourned to the 8th, and one of Tony Pasca's the night before the meeting. That's not right.
We're not.
You wouldn't want that in your
we're
business.
not disagreeing, and not to talk about other cases, but like I said, we're in agreement, okay? We never thought that with respect to those other cases, it should have happened, okay? But the cases were not ready for a public hearing,
Okay.
and we didn't think it was for us to have.
All right. There are
have
different
ascertained
cases,
that.
perhaps. But
We
this
don't
is
have to talk
different.
about other cases.
We
Let
were
us
ready
do
for
our
this.
motion, and
Over
so.
my objection, but I understand.
Okay, so a motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn case, let me get the right case number. To adjourn case number 3155, 1750 Waterview LLC, until our meeting on August 8th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So let's go to our first. Case, we have case number, it looks like first is case number 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane.
Thank you, John Bennett for the applicant. With me this evening is Bailey Larkin, also Tom Curcio, who's from Coral Brothers, and Bruce Sperano, who's the project architect. I submitted my case in full at the last hearing. Again, this is a request for approximately 600, what is it? 600 plus or minus square feet. Bailey, what's the number? I'm so sorry. 621 square feet addition to a piece of, to a house. The additions are all outside of or north of the coastal erosion hazard line. And Mr. Farron had some questions about Coral Brothers estimates. So the only thing that I want to address this evening, unless the board has any additional questions, is to ask John Cuccia to come up and address why the comparison of the construction of a proposed two-story addition, which for various reasons is optimal, and the benefit that my client seeks without any impact to the character of the neighborhood, as best witnessed by the letters of support from neighbors on either side, why the proposed two-story addition construction as opposed to the one-story comparable square footage reduction, why there is that delta or variance. So I would just ask John to come up and slowly and deliberately, if he may, explain the difference. And I would respectfully request that if you have any questions about his explanation, you hold him until he's done, because I think it'll be.
Can I have a question for you first, just so we put this into
Sure.
into context? I think what's happened so far in this application is that there's one proposal, which is a two-story addition, and then you're suggesting that there is a way for the applicant to obtain the same benefits.
Nope, absolutely not. I'm glad you said that. Absolutely not. Because the benefit, as the village of Deering Harbor found after 3 trips to the appellate division, where the appellate division judge looked at the lawyer from Deering Harbor and said, I don't want to see you back here anymore, give him the variance. The benefit is something very specific. The benefit is the ability to have these bedrooms on the same floor, the second floor, and have them also to have views of Shinnecock Bay, where all these bedrooms have now. I'm not expanding the number of bedrooms, I just want to expand in a very small manner, to about 340 square foot, the existing bedrooms. And the Baker versus Brownlee case is very, very, very instructive. Anybody who's even taken one drive through Deering Harbor will know that as you drive along that beautiful waterfront, the houses are on one side, then you have a road, and there are docks on the other side. And the houses all have porches to gain the view over the water. In
Mr.
Baker,
Bennett, not to, you're gonna wanna speak into the mic.
okay,
otherwise-
in Baker versus Brownlee, in what I can only describe as a very cheeky position, the Deering Harbor Zoning Board of Appeals, and they were later overruled, said, well, you want an outside porch, put it on the back side of the house with no water view. So that the benefit that the applicant wishes is to have these bedrooms on the same floor, the family bedrooms on the same floor, somewhat expanded, and be able to have those bedrooms not only be on the same floor in their somewhat very minorly expanded manner, but also to have those have the view of Shinnecock Bay. I showed you in the photographs the difference between the first floor and the second floor. So no, I cannot get the benefit, and that's a term of art, and that's very, very, the case law bears me out. I cannot get the benefit that I want, which is what I just described, by some other alternate method. The only reason that I submitted the other plan was to show you that attempting to do some additional square footage in a way that doesn't get me the benefit, in any event, is much more expensive. And as I described that at the last meeting, I think that's just icing on the cake. Because even without that difference in construction cost, I think you have an absolutely perfect case for granting a variance. My role as an advocate is to put so much in the record that you will feel comfortable that you can grant this case without and realize that I have given you so much to put in your packet to grant this that you'll be able to distinguish it from other cases. I'm very, very aware of that. There's a couple of things that I do when applicants come into me. I do so much of this board's work. I say to people, I'm not going to go to the board with that. That's too aggressive. They're not going to grant that. People come to me all the time and say, I want a lot coverage variance, and I look at them and say, the board doesn't give them. In 35 years, I've obtained one for Our Lady of the Hampton School. So I'm not going to represent you. I do so much of the work. But the other part of the work is to try to take what people want and narrow it down to the minimum to get them where they realize the benefit. And that's what we've done in this application. It's 290 feet from the street, 290 feet. You're not going to see the difference. It's not going to have any impact on the neighbor, on the character of the community. That's why the people willingly gave their letters of support. It's you even questioned at one point, you're expanding these bedrooms so in such a small manner, why bother? Which I did have to scratch my head, because that's what the law says I'm supposed to do. I'm only supposed to request the minimal variance necessary to get me the benefit that I want. So that's where we are. No, I don't. That alternate scheme doesn't get me the benefit I want, far from it. I'm just have it in here to show you, not only does it not get me the benefit that it wants, but it's much more expensive to do it in some other way that doesn't give me the benefit. And that's why I'd like you to ask Mr. Cuccio to be able to.
But here's my question, because right now, it appears to me that we're just confusing the record, not helping the record.
Well, that's.
We have a, let me finish.
Okay.
Okay. We have a 5-point test to go through.
Mm-hmm.
The second test is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Okay. When you presented an alternative with a cost comparison, okay, I thought you were addressing our point number 2, whether
No.
the benefit. So then why are we talking about
Because
this
the case
alternative?
law, which I gave to your counsel, also states that if you're going to experience some economic harm by building something without the variance, by approaching it without the variance, or by i.e. the board not gaining the variance, the board is supposed to keep that in mind and supposed to make that part of their calculus. See, I think quite clearly right now, this is where we are. And I'd like to have Mr. Cuccio testify, and then you can take it for whatever you want. I think you have to consider it, but if you don't want to consider it, you know.
I'm confused as to why you want us
I just
to
explained it.
consider it. It doesn't fit within the 5-point test, so why are we?
I just
doing
explained
this?
it. There's judicial
I
gloss
didn't
on those
understand.
tests
But
that say.
okay, we can talk about whether or not it fits under the case
Are you
law.
gonna
Is
be
that it?
suggesting that you're going to prevent me from
No,
presenting
no, go
it?
ahead. No,
Okay.
I'm just talking with
Okay.
legal counsel. If you think under the case law, somehow this is relevant, then we'll listen to whatever.
No, I do think
was-
it's relevant to hear what they're presenting, if I understand correctly, and counsel, and I'm sure the gentleman who's to my left will explain further. I think what they're talking about is they're obligated to present whether or not there are other alternatives. I think Mr. Bennett wants to present somebody who has helped him in that examination. That is something that is relevant before the board. So I think anything they wish to add on that point it may be important to the board, it may be unimportant to the board at some point, but it's information that the board, I think, would want to hear.
Okay, thank you.
Before you begin, is there a floor plan that you use to price the one-story
It's part of the application, Luke. We
in the
submitted it.
application? Okay.
Yeah, we submitted it. We talked about it the last time. Actually, Bruce had it out. We were talking about it. I know it's hard to keep all this stuff in your head, but it is. Yeah, there was a separate floor plan. So do that, and then I'll have some comments on it. But if you could just let him present, I think it'll go a lot faster.
Let's do it.
If I may.
Good evening. My name is John Cuccia. I'm with Coral Brothers. My position is Senior Project Manager Estimator for the company. The purpose of my comments tonight is to address the comments made by Luke Ferran, board member, during last work session with regard to case 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane LLC on June the 13th, 2023. While at first review of the pricing for both the proposed two-story, 621 square foot.
So,
All
Mr. Curcio, I'm
addition,
going to interrupt
alteration.
you, and I know Mr. Bennett asked me not to. Mr. Bennett, I know that, as you say, it's difficult to keep all of these things in our heads, but you did not submit a floor plan for the first, for the one-story addition. You provided a site plan.
That,
So do you stand corrected? It's difficult to keep these things in our heads, aren't they?
No, you're right. This is site plan.
Okay,
I
Well-
didn't mean to mislead you.
okay.
Also, I mean, just on the same page, there weren't any elevations with respect to the, I didn't see any.
It's a one-story.
It's just a site plan. Okay, so,
So just before you get really into this, I just want to understand how you were able, as a professional estimator, to come up with these figures when you didn't have a plan to work off of.
well, that's a very good question, and that's what I'm trying to explain.
Okay.
Because the process is really by analyzing the square footage and what's involved in terms of substructure and all to achieve the purpose of it. In one case, you have a two-story addition that is essentially cantilevered off of the existing second floor. So if you will, we're pushing out an existing area and extending it. The second scenario would be a 621 square foot ground floor addition. Okay, and as you know, building on the beach, there are many significant requirements. Essentially, the single-story version would require significant site work, logistical planning, and support, given that this is a finished, fully landscaped site with a finished driveway, accessibility for heavy machinery to install helical pilings, poured concrete grade beams, poured concrete foundation, and slab, all would be required. New domestic water and waste lines would also be necessary. And we would require a sewage ejector pit in the first floor addition scenario as well, given the proximity of the newly located first floor bathrooms and the existing septic. It would have to actually pump up across the building and then return down by means of a gravity feed system to attain the enter into the existing septic system that is there. These are all additional costs that are involved. A new HVAC air handler, condenser, ductwork, low voltage wiring, hydronic heat lines would also be required as well. Regarding electrical power, new circuits would have to be run back to the existing panel with code required arc fault breakers to the new bedrooms, additional lighting, GFIC protected outlets for the new baths, as well as additional wiring for the mechanical equipment connections, sewage ejector pit, sewage ejector alarm, all that would be required for, again, the first floor addition scenario. So, as you can see, with this mechanical situation, there is also significant removal and replacement of existing finishes within the house. In other words, you would have to route the new mechanicals back to the existing, which would involve opening walls, ceilings, floors, whatever, to get back into the areas from where these existing mechanicals start in. So there is quite a bit of patchwork, if you will, involved in that. There are additional framing materials and labor, given the fact that we do have a far greater exterior wall and roof areas in this version as well. The calculation is 440 square foot of exterior walls in the single-story addition versus 180 square feet of exterior walls in the two-story version. 621 square feet of roofing in the single-story version versus 270 square feet in the two-story version. With this, we also have the added siding and roofing costs, more insulation, more drywall and finishes would also have to be considered. There was a comment about interior doors. If we move walls within the same floor system as we're proposing to do in the second floor addition, we can certainly reuse those doors. Now, if you are moving to a first floor where the floor heights, ceiling heights are different, those same doors are most likely not going to be usable given a higher ceiling height, which would be required, because if you look at the distance from the slab to the second floor system, there's a substantial height difference. So you would be looking at a large area, perhaps 4 or 5 feet above the door to the ceiling, which is completely out of scale, in my opinion, as well as that of the architect present here as well. Again, when you consider the proposed two-story version, use of existing MEPs is far less costly. We're literally extending the ductwork 8 feet from its existing location across a bay of joists and just putting that same outlet down, as opposed to purchasing, installing, wiring, accessing a complete new system. The same is true for the electric. It's merely adding on an additional outlet or two as opposed to running a complete new home run back to the existing main electric panel and having all of that wiring there. So there's significant MEP advantages to this, including waste lines and all. If you look at that second floor proposed plan for the two-story version, you will notice that the existing waste and supplies are already in very close proximity to the proposed new locations of the bathrooms. So the plumbing work, in essence, is minimal. In fact, all of the mechanical work is minimal. So you look at finishes, you look at mechanical, you're looking at concrete, engineering, excavation, and suddenly you start to see where there's a significant price difference. And granted, at first glance, it's like, what the heck, 600 feet, 500 feet, why is there such a big difference? But in all in all, basically, when you look at the single-story option, it is significantly more costly because the use of a square footage assessment as the only governing factor certainly does not apply here.
Can I ask you a couple of questions, or let me
Go,
ask
you
them
start.
of you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like in listening with him, that there's drawings we don't have, because it just seemed like he has a floor layout. He has an ability to measure the roofing. I just feel like we don't have certain drawings that he's referencing, or somehow, is that possible?
If
Do
I
you have
heard,
floor plan, have you looked at floor plans?
I'm working off of a site plan.
You're just working off of the site
I am taking the
plan.
raw square footage,
Right.
and I am placing the same two bathrooms upstairs, downstairs, with the same two bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these considerations would have to be taken into fact, because you do require the electrical supply, as stated. You do require the water and waste, as stated. And you certainly require the HVAC system, as stated. And everybody knows you have to have the foundation. The foundation sits upon a grade beam. The grade beams sit on the helical pilings. There's significant engineering involved with that, as opposed to a fairly simple steel truss design to hold up the proposed second floor addition. So everything about this is very deceiving. It's a simple box. Why does it cost so much? But it's all of the nuts and bolts that really make it happen that one has to consider when you're doing this. And that's where the costs come involved.
So I just want to clarify.
Sure.
You are able to do this without floor plans, without elevations. The only thing you've seen is the site plan, which is the only thing we've seen.
I literally took a 621 square foot box, 29 foot 10 inches by 21 foot 4 inches, and you can place the bedrooms and the bathrooms anywhere within that space that you want. You have 2 bedrooms, you have 2 bathrooms, and presumably there's closet space and the like. But we're talking about the nuts and bolts. To build one room, you still need the foundation, the piles, the excavation, the engineering, the grade beams. You still need all the MEPs. You still need the water. It's all there, no matter how you slice it. It doesn't matter whether one bedroom is 9 by 12 and the other's 16 by 15. And it doesn't matter whether the bath is marble or the bath is tile. We're talking about just a baseline cost on actually getting the substructure involved in this addition scenario, so that we could, make a living space. You got to insulate it. You have to put a roof over it. You have to put siding on it. As I said, the square footage on these is significantly different when you really look at it. So it's not so much how the rooms are divided up via a floor plan, and we're not looking at a huge difference in windows and doors for the exterior section. It's merely getting the working components into a 620 square foot space that is really where the cost is here.
So I guess the questions I may have are the proposal that you prefer, expanding the bedrooms just slightly. There's still a pretty substantial amount of demolition and reconfiguration work
There's no question about
within.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So we agree.
Yeah.
On the construction sites that I've been on, we're gonna peel all the sheetrock off. We're gonna demo that. Any insulation in the ceiling is probably outdated now. It's going to be removed, right? There's potentially, as you say, we're just extending the ductwork for the HVAC 8 feet. We haven't actually seen that ductwork yet or calculated the CFMs to know that an extra 8 feet is going to still power the room or not. It could be, it's reasonable to say that it could be at the max length that it was designed for, and that going an additional 8 feet would necessitate maybe a whole new blower system. So there's a some level of assumption that you're making on the need for new materials that we don't really know for sure yet. And also, you know, you say this requires less insulation, but we know how the demolition and a renovation goes. All of the insulation on the second floor of that affected area is going to be replaced. So we're not really looking at, you know, X amount of square feet versus another quantity of square feet. It's substantial either way. In the 2-story, it seems as if you're saving on structural engineering. I would ask the architect, you know, are you sizing those beams?
Well, let's just not.
No,
let's
that's
not
more
go down
that was
that
more
road.
rhetorical
Later
than
we
anything
might have
else.
questions for
And
you, but
I,
let's
you
collect
know,
them.
I would not size those beams.
Right.
If I were him, I would have a structural engineer sign off
Right.
on that. Even if I went to the green book and sized them, I would still have an engineer
course.
look at it and
Of
approve it.
course.
And so you have a spreadsheet here, you've presented it into the case that there's no need for an engineer.
No, I didn't say that, sir.
Well, there's no number here for structural engineering.
But there is a structural steel number that's included in the price, whereas it is not present in the single-story version.
I'm just looking at your document that says pre-construction services,
Mhm.
engineer structural.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a $7,500 figure for the single-story version,
Right.
and there's no number in there for the 2-story version.
Right.
If I may, one of the liabilities of coming from a family of builders is knowing how this works. You know, as well as anyone, that steel is expensive. Half the time on a small project like this, you buy the steel from them, they throw in the design. That's been my experience with John Deegan all the time. So I think that's a fair
If
assumption.
John Deegan does that for you, then I'm going to have a serious conversation with him because he charges
Well,
me
his
a lot
dad
of
used to
money
do
for
it
that.
like so-
Okay.
But in any event, and Coral's been around forever. And
Okay.
you know very well, in the industry, if you buy the steel, oftentimes the engineering, particularly on a straightforward job, is thrown in.
I actually disagree with that,
Okay,
but
that's fine.
but that's fine. I mean, that's not really going to make or break the instance here. And also, I want to point out, I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. What I have an issue with, as someone who looks at bids all the time,
Mhm.
is that your 2-story version pricing seems to be artificially low relative to what we know in the construction business as what will truly be necessary to make a 2-story version
Okay.
work. I mean, your project management numbers, your site supervisor and your project manager are 50%. You can't look at me with a straight face and say that you're going to do 2 stories in half the time as 1 story.
There's significantly less site management involved in the 2-story versus the single-story. Absolutely.
How so?
Absolutely.
I mean,
As I
your
just
guy is gonna
explained.
be there every day, right? Your site supervisor's there.
Not for a full day, but in the single-story version, as
Yeah.
I mentioned, look at the site work that's involved. You have to demolish an existing parking area, you have to pull back a finished driveway, you have to take out Belgian block curbing, then you gotta excavate. Where are you gonna put the fill?
I'm just talking about the
I am
man,
talking about
management hours.
someone being on site to point the fingers, to
Yes.
set up the logistics. This is not a site where I can come in 100 feet over there, drive around in a circle, dump a load of 20 yards of sand, and drive off the project.
We agree that will require more management.
Okay.
But I don't agree that it requires half the amount of management.
Well, I respectfully disagree with you.
But are you saying that you would do this in half the amount of time?
I am saying that the two-story addition is significantly less with respect to site supervision and project management. Absolutely, no question about it.
Right, but you're still not answering my question, 'cause I'm being really specific. I'm talking about timing, and you're a
That's-
professional estimator. Part of your calculation, you provided the two-story price. You guys have a schedule. You're hoping to break ground in September, I'm sure.
Right.
And so you know how long it's going to take. And I'm
Ano-
asking you,
Another thing, sir, is you're a professional in the industry, well-respected. We're looking at a very basic floor plan, number one, okay?
Right.
There are no specifications for finishes or how involved or how uninvolved the finishes would be here. I was asked to provide a baseline cost for a fairly straightforward thing in both scenarios so that you could make an informed decision based on one scenario versus the other.
yeah, and we don't
And-
need a finish schedule. We all know we can do it for a
Absolutely.
bathroom
So
for $5 a
why-
square
why
foot
are
or $200.
You're challenging the numbers. You have the MEPs, you have the foundation, you have the site work, you have logistics, coordination, all substantially more, without question, in the single-story version versus the two-story
So
proposed.
let's go to another line item.
I'm not really interested in arguing line items. I am
No,
talking
we're not-
about using your common construction sense
Yeah,
and seeing that when you look at this, it is not what it appears to be just at first glance. That's all.
and I would like to think I have the ability to see past the first glance on construction estimates. I don't view this as an argument. I view this, as John says, a collegiate discussion. But these two documents are presented to us as something that is supposed to color our decision-making, and so they do warrant some level of increased examination. And, you know, look, and I don't want to put you on the spot on something that you likely prepared weeks ago. These numbers start to come out of my mind as well. I just have a hard time seeing $5,900 as a rough framing material figure for your two-story, or for your one-story, for the
Are you-
two-story version.
Are you familiar with what's required for framing on the two-story version?
Yeah, I mean, you're demoing the entire
No,
bedroom
I'm
suite.
talking about framing on the two-story version.
Well, I can only see the demolition plan.
Okay. You're extending a wall 9 feet on the east side and the west side,
Right.
and you're basically installing all glass on the north side. So there's very little framing in that scenario. And being that the flanking walls are only 9 feet, where is their framing material?
All right, let me see if I can pull up the plan.
Like, can I interject a question?
Yeah,
while you're
sure.
looking at that? When it comes to the two-story plan,
Mhm.
currently this is garage space, right?
The first floor is garage space. The second floor is living space. And just to bring you back to speed, the plan calls for an extension of the second floor to move 9 feet north. It's roughly I believe it's about a 29-foot 10 plus or minus long wall that's being pushed out 9 feet. So for argument's sake, it's 10 by 30. It's a 300 square foot extension, and then a renovation of the existing garage, which makes up the balance, bringing it up to the 620 square feet that we're talking about. Then I was asked to look at what does 620 square feet look like in a first floor, single story addition, and that's what I put in place here. So there's where.
Okay, no, I'm following.
Yep.
This question, it might be better for the architect, I'm just not sure.
Okay.
But if you can answer it, great. If you can't, but the plan here, we don't have a foundation plan. It would be nice to have a foundation plan, but it may not be necessary, because what you might be saying, is that you're taking the garage space, which, is it on slab?
The garage currently is on a slab, which is on a foundation wall on a grade beam on piles. It all has to be built that way.
Okay, so none of that is being touched. There's no excavation whatsoever with respect to the.
All you have to do is you have to chip away the concrete, install base plates for your steel to bear upon. They would then be bored in and epoxied with the appropriate fasteners, and that registers the base, or if you will, the legs and feet of the steel on both the inner and outer parts. So you're looking at 4 points of connection, and then you have a cantilever coming out. It's not something, I agree with Mr. Ferran, it's not something that I'm going to say, oh, you can go with a W1240 and you'll be fine. But we know that it's a pretty simple thing, and it's somewhere in that range, and therefore you can say, there's $1,500 to cut out 4 2-foot by 2-foot squares and drill and put the bolts in.
No, I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
What I'd like, and it would be helpful for the board, as part of the record, to have a foundation plan, because we don't have one.
I'd
But
love
what
it.
you're saying is, maybe the foundation plan is minimal. In other words, we're
Right.
not, because we're essentially retaining the existing slab. We're not excavating,
Mhm.
that's it. But it would be helpful to have that as part of the record, that your construction methodology is keeping the existing,
Okay.
Garage slab.
I would,
We could submit, I'm gonna ask the board to close the matter this evening, but if you keep it open, for written submission, we could certainly submit that. I don't think that's a big stretch, Bruce, to get to the board, for their comfort, because I certainly want you to be comfortable with
Yeah.
all the representations that have been made.
I know
Okay.
there's, there's a lot of hyperbole, because there isn't a concrete thing for you to hold in your hand and look at and say, oh, this makes sense. But with the floor plan and all, you'll be able to see probably better where it is. But again, when you look at just the infrastructure that's required to do one version versus the other, there is a significant cost difference, and to be aware of that. It's not just square footage here, square footage there.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate you coming down. Obviously, you do know what you're talking about when it comes to construction methodologies. I still remain convinced that the numbers are artificially low on the 2-story.
On both versions?
No,
or-
sorry, on the one. Yeah, on the 2-story. Totals out what, $495.
And what would you think it would be?
Oh, you're in here for 7 figures.
7 figures.
Easy.
And what
For the
would the
first floor.
single-story version cost?
Same. I think they're going to be very, very similar. I know, and notwithstanding, you had mentioned we had touched on finishes,
Mhm.
but you actually do have a finish number in here for tile. Where did it go?
Yeah, I have a baseline. so
Yeah, a
that-
baseline,
Right,
right. So,
right.
like, are the bathrooms really going to be that much sized differently? Like, we're assuming that the baseline, you used the same square foot number for both versions.
Right.
Right. So why does one become so much less money?
Because you're utilizing part of what's there. You're not completely demolishing one of them that's in place. You're reusing
We
the
have 10
extra
foot
space.
ceilings on the first floor, sorry. Bruce Ferrano, the architect.
Yeah.
We have 10 foot and I think this is what John's point. Yeah, sure. So the second floor, the existing second floor is, I think, 8 feet,
Right.
and the first floor is 10 feet.
Sure.
So you're gonna get more tile on the first floor. We have to, everything's just gonna be much taller. That's probably why
Okay,
the
I mean, so,
framing-
all right, let's just, look, and Bruce, again, like, I really do like what you've drawn here. I think it's a very elegant and architectural piece. I think it looks like it's been there forever. Like, really, I truly compliment you on that. I have serious issues with the two price comparisons. We're not gonna leave any existing bathroom tile and hope to match it, right? So we may get the added expense of 2 feet higher, but if we're talking about 8 feet versus 10 feet, what are we talking about? 15% differences, and yeah, but we've got a 50% difference in the cost.
What about leaving the bathroom untouched?
Bruce,
That's-
we're gonna do this renovation, we're gonna leave a bathroom untouched?
You're taking charge of a project that's not yours, and that's not really
Let's hear from the
what's going
architect.
on.
If there's a way to save money, if there's a way to save money, and this is why I work with Coral Brothers, it's a sort of collaborative process, so.
Sure.
That's what we try to do is add value to the project for the homeowner.
Okay.
Bruce, can I ask you some questions? I think we've established, but you're gonna submit a construction methodology, I think.
No, it's just for the floor plan. You asked for a floor plan for the basement, correct?
No, I asked for a foundation plan.
Excuse me, foundation.
Yeah,
So,
foundation
Mark,
plan.
I'm gonna engineer a foundation plan for a hypothetical
No,
first
no,
floor.
for the two-story.
Okay.
I'm not,
That's
For
what
the-
you asked for.
yeah, for the two-story.
Yeah, that's what you asked for.
A foundation plan, to see what's going on, right? And a construction methodology, so we just understand what the plans are. So-
Construction methodology is a term of art that usually says how where you're gonna have a marshalling area for the materials, where you're gonna bring in materials and stuff like that.
Mhm.
That we usually get construction methodologies on wetlands applications to make sure that all the work is gonna be happening outside of the area, within the hay bales and stuff like that, so I'm
Okay,
not
so
trying
let
to
me talk to
spar
our,
with you.
no,
I
no,
certainly need
you don't
a
have to.
construction
I'll
methodology.
talk with our environmental consultant. If he thinks we need one, we'll send a letter to
Well,
you.
it's no wetlands.
I understand.
Well, so I think maybe what Mark means is just, all right, so let me, you can speak for yourself. What I would like to see is a proposed foundation plan showing any and all concrete, grade beams, and/or pilings as specified by a structural engineer for your preferred design, okay? What you're gonna do to post down. Second, I'd like to see a 1/4 inch building section along this axis, which I will share with Jeffrey, who will share with John. The section should take specific care to detail the connection between the existing garage slab foundation and any new proposed structural work. Within the section drawing, I'd also like to see the coastal hazard line represented vertically, just so we get a sense of how close we actually are there.
That is on the survey. And you
I know it's on the survey.
You realize that all the proposed
I
work
d-
is north of it.
I do. I just want to see it in section, represented vertically, just so I can have a frame of reference in there.
And we're not asking for any coastal erosion hazard line relief. The village, building department, the village building inspector is the coastal erosion hazard permit administrator pursuant to the local law. We feel more than confident that we can comply with the limitations of coastal erosion hazard law, not only physically because all the work is happening
the addition is happening north of it, but also any interior work will be well within the limitations.
I
But
think
we'll
I
give you
can,
that.
that's clear on the proposal. We know how renovations can go, and we just want to get a sense of, like, potentially, could the work start to approach that line? That's my curiosity.
I'm sure that
That's a no-brainer. I'm gonna take care of that.
All right, cool.
okay.
I'll put that request in writing for Jeff to pass on to you, and,
I have it here, so.
okay.
So Bruce, this may be a question for you. I'm just trying to get an overview of the goals, here. It seems like, yes, we're expanding the bedrooms on the second floor 3 feet, but we're also eliminating a garage, right?
Yeah, and we have 290 feet between.
No, I understand, that's not my question. Let me finish.
No, but.
So where are cars going?
Well,
Are we just,
there's quite literally 290 feet between here and the road.
right,
The setback for any parking is 90 feet, so we have
Right.
oodles of room to put cars.
Mark, they're not even used, we built them a 2-car garage, and they haven't used it. They have a ping pong table in there. They use it for entertaining right now, entertaining
And
purposes.
if I'm not mistaken, there is parking for 10 cars shown on the site plan with the proposed 2-story addition.
no, I understand. So I'm just
Okay.
clarifying that some people in the world like to park nice cars inside a more controlled environment, a garage. I'm just asking you that is part of this,
Well, if the
the
desire is that.
benefit of the applicant, let me please.
Okay.
The benefit of the applicant, I understand, is expanding the second floor, but they're also, for reasons that only they have to appreciate, they're willing to surrender a garage and park cars outside.
No,
I'm
but
just,
that's not, you're distorting things, because there's,
I'm trying not
number
to, I'm
one.
asking.
No, you're not, no, you are, because number one.
Well, then put it in the form of a question. Is that what they're trying to do?
No, let me respond the way, as a lawyer, I will respond. There's more than adequate area to park cars in conformance with the zoning limitations, number one. And number two, if they choose down the road, if they decide to become classic car collectors and want to put cars in a garage, there's more than adequate space to construct a garage. But we're here now about one tranche of what the relief that is requested. What you're asking for has nothing to do with whether or not the variance should be granted or not.
Oh, that's for us to deliberate. I can see a reason why parking cars not in a garage but only having outdoor parking might impact our decision. But leave that for our deliberations. I'm just trying to clarify.
That would be inappropriate.
Well,
That would be
that's fine, John.
an
Okay.
inappropriate, no, I've been doing this for 40 years. That would be an inappropriate inquiry. It has nothing to do with the relief requesting, it has nothing to do with any effect of the release we're requesting. You're not here to dictate how somebody can.
You don't think that affects the change in the character of the neighborhood in any way?
Absolutely not.
That's for us to deliberate.
If somebody decides that they want to put a garage within the 290-foot front yard, that's not going to have, an as-of-right construction is not going to have any, by a matter of law, is not going to have any impact on the character of the neighborhood, as a matter of law.
I missed a step.
Well, I'll tell you right now.
Right now, the plan is just to put the cars outside. Are you suggesting that actually the plan is to find?
Maybe not.
That's my question. I'm just trying
However,
to get-
no, however,
You know.
however, you should be aware, what you're asking runs afoul of a case versus Sandy International versus Corman, which I litigated successfully against this
Jeff,
board.
do you have that site? Let's have a look at
I
that.
don't have that site, and I assume that Mr. Bennett would agree that I'll be the one advising the board on legality. The
Yes.
question was asked,
No,
and
but
Mr.
I
Bennett's
can
taking.
tell you,
But
if
Mr.
I'm in
Bennett,
response, whether to a question, I can tell you whether or not the request or the inquiry line is an appropriate one.
So if
And
I
I'm
could,
telling
if
you
I
right
could just
now-
finish my thought, my point was that I'll be advising the board on the legality, and council's citing a case, so I'd appreciate if I could just get the site, and I will certainly.
I've sent you a copy of the case.
Sandy
in
versus Corman, 'cause I'm
Sandy
looking-
International versus Corman, Elise Corman. And in that case, the board tried to have a nexus between relief that they were granted and in futuro as of right construction, and the Supreme Court Suffolk County
By
said
the way,
that
I
that.
didn't even suggest that. I don't know
Okay.
where, I wasn't contemplating in futuro construction. that wasn't even close to my question, but we'll read the case.
And what I'm suggesting to you is you cannot, part of your inquiry on a case is whether or not taking away a garage is going to have an impact on the character of the neighborhood when someone can construct a garage in a wholly conforming area, number one. And number two, well, in any event, I think you're way off mark on that question, Mark.
Bruce, do you have the drawing set here tonight? Just start with your site diagram, and you might have to put it on the table so it can be shared. Page A001, right? Okay, and you have the coastal hazard line in purple, right? Okay, and we kind of get a sense of approximately where it is. I just want to kind of go back to what I was getting at and why I want to see it represented vertically on the section drawing. Because if I then now look down on, say, D101, like, are you sure that none of that work in daughter's bedroom number 2 overlaps the coastal hazard line?
It's partitions, it's not structural, it's internal to the house, so internal partitions
Okay.
that already exist.
Does, Jeffrey, does the code distinguish between internal work and external work in that regard?
In terms of which particular thing?
So, like, would they be free as long as they maintained the outer shell of the house? Would they be free and permitted to reconfigure the spaces how they see fit, even if those spaces internal to the existing home were southward of the coastal hazard line?
As long as they're not changing the shell, you mean?
As long as they're not changing the shell.
I don't think that creates a problem. I'll
Okay.
review the code.
Okay.
But
cool.
may I just ask a question, and maybe I just misunderstood? I have a case that was sent called Coleman versus Corman. I thought you just said Sandy. Which?
There are two cases. One is Sandy International.
Okay.
Oh, we'll send you that. My
Okay,
apologies.
thanks. No,
My
because I
apologies.
have the
other-
Corman
other
case. I
case
didn't have the.
is Coleman versus Corman. That's
That I have.
that's
That I
the
have. And
character of the
right,
neighborhood
I read
as
it.
impacted by, as negative impact
Right.
in character of the neighborhood witnessed by letters of support.
Right, so it's a
The other one, my
1993
apologies.
case,
I will
right.
send you Sandy.
I'd
That's
appreciate
another
that.
case I prevailed against
Okay.
against this board.
I'd like to see it. But I will double check the code for you to make sure.
Okay. Well, I would stand corrected if that's the case.
I mean, you're aware that the your own coastal erosion hazard line code says, coastal erosion hazard area says you can expand a non-conforming coastal erosion, a structure that doesn't form coastal erosion up to 25% of the footprint. So we've made it, taken great pains to make sure that all the additions are north of it.
So just speaking of non-conforming existences, John, can you just, I know I'm asking you to repeat something you said last month. Would you mind running me through your rationale with regard to continuing a, what's the word I'm looking for? Continuing a non-conforming use
Okay.
and how it relates to the 5-point test.
So one of the things I told you is the history of this is the way this came about is very, very important. So the people have owned the home, my clients have owned the home since 2001. I was corrected by my client. I said 2006 is 2001. Prior to 2015, if any portion of the roof had a pitch greater than 7/12, the home was considered a pitched roof home for height requirements. So that's how this house, even though we're not even going as high as the highest part of the house with the request for the height variance, that's how this house got to where it was, because a portion of it had a pitched roof. And you may say that that somehow was taking advantage of the limitations of a definition, and I accept that, but it was the law, and that's what happened. And then as a result of a rather contentious case that I was involved in regarding 40 Meadow Lane, there was an amendment to the code, and then it said you have to have a certain, all but 15% of the house, I believe it is, Bailey, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, all but 15% of the house has to have a gabled portion to be considered to allow the 35 feet as opposed to the 28 feet.
Understood.
So that happened subsequent to the construction of this house. And then in addition, the prior interpretation of the measurement of height for the elevated structures allowed for the height of the home plus the freeboard. And the trustees took that out. So the height restriction was amended in 2022 to measure the height of the home beginning at base floodplain elevation. They took the two out. So that's significant. And then probably the most significant change to the law as it relates to the need for this request, which before these amendments only 5 or 6 years ago, we wouldn't even be here, was that they imposed, the trustees imposed sky plan requirements in this area. The only other time you saw sky plan requirements on the beach on Meadow Lane were in an unadopted Meadow Lane overlay district, which was never adopted, but as Mark can tell you, the Zoning Board of Appeals used in the past as a guideline for mostly for reconstruction of homes on the north side of Meadow Lane.
Okay.
So that's, again, 6-7 years ago, we wouldn't even be here, but this whole slew of regulations came in, and I'm glad you asked me to talk about that, because the point is that none of this difficulty has been self-created, not a speck of it. It was as a result of subsequent enactments. Now, the reason I'm glad you asked me to talk about that is because in reviewing the transcript of the last hearing, I did notice that Mark said that, well, maybe that means that the trustees wanted those things of that nature, those types of limitations to be put into homes in this area. And I don't disagree with that, but what I will tell you is that has nothing to do, zero to do, with whether or not a request for relief is appropriate in this case. You can't just say, that's the law now, because you would have a zoning board of appeals. So what you have to do is go through the 5-part test. So I hope that explains what you wanted to hear.
Well,
If
you
not,
stopped just short of getting to
Okay.
the answer, I think, because we do understand the history of the laws,
Yes.
and we may agree or disagree with them, and
Mhm.
we can definitely say X amount of years ago you wouldn't even be in front of us
Right.
for this.
Has to do with self-created hardship.
Right. But I will, and I think you were
lack of-
preemptively disagreed with me, I will say that we do understand what the code is today, right? So, and the height restrictions and the pyramid restrictions. So there was one possibility of designing to meet today's code and not needing to ask for a variance.
But it doesn't get the benefit.
It just,
You see, before, that's a very, very significant change that the state legislature made when they changed both the town law and the village law.
right.
Because people used to say, you know, you can do it somewhere else, you can create the square footage somewhere else,
Mhm.
but you have to examine the benefit that's being requested, and that Baker versus Brownlee case, I'll distribute it to everybody.
And I'm interrupted. I think the question, the idea of the first floor to me seems a little bit just, unnecessarily confusing.
Mm.
I think the question that you're raising, which is the better question, is from your point of view, could you look at a way that they could, the benefit, as I understand it, is adding 3 feet to the bedrooms?
No, that's not the entire benefit. You're gonna
I thought
have to
that's what you
keep,
said
I'm
the
gonna
last
have,
meeting.
that's not the
With
entire
views.
benefit.
You're saying the
With views.
benefit is the views of the bay.
Yeah, and that's
On the
something that the
second floor.
board, that
Okay,
the second
please,
department has
John,
recognized.
I can't ask let me finish my question.
But you keep on
okay?
mischaracterizing my
Let me finish the question.
application.
You don't know what I'm characterizing.
You
yet.
already have in what you've said. Mark, don't get exasperated. You keep on defining
It's
what my
exasperating. You're
benefit
the
is.
only person who interrupts everybody when they're trying to finish sentences.
No, I'm trying to correct an error that you keep
Okay.
on making. You're defining what my
let me know
benefit
when
is.
you're done, and then I'll deliberate with the board without your.
Just please don't distort the benefit that I'm asking for.
I want to get to your question, but can we agree that they have the benefit today?
What benefit?
The benefit of the 2 bedrooms on the north side of the house, viewing the
That's an
bay.
irrelevant question. The benefit that I'm asking for is to expand those bedrooms in a manner that doesn't affect the character of the neighborhood, but gives the benefit of having those bedrooms on the second floor. That's the benefit that I'm asking for.
But
The
they
benefit they have a single-family residence now. That's a benefit.
But no. But they have everything. Nothing really conceptually changes about the house, except that the bedrooms get a couple of feet closer to the bay. So the view isn't obstructed now. This isn't to benefit them getting a view. They already have a view. No?
No, the benefit is to enlarge these bedrooms because they're very small. And
Okay.
what you always have to look at in these cases is whether or not there's any impact on the character of the neighborhood in the benefit that is requested. And the benefit that is requested is to enlarge these, so you have to balance. Always you have to balance.
But what just
But
like
let me finish.
We
You-
can
because
go
I'm
back to
responding
the
to your question.
record, right? You just said to Mark that the benefit was the views of the bay, and now you're saying that the benefit is to just enlarge space.
The benefit was the enlarged space that we're asking for, which is reasonable. There's no impact on the neighborhood, to enlarge those bedrooms and to afford those bedrooms views of the bay.
So if the only benefit that you're really seeking is to enlarge the bedrooms
That's not what I said.
and afford views of the bay.
Okay, well, that's the significant
Okay.
difference that in your statement.
Okay, so it's enlarge the bedrooms, maintain views of the bay.
Exactly.
Okay, the views of the bay that they already have, maintain, enlarge the bedrooms. What if we explored some sort of split level?
You don't get there. How would you get there with a split level? We want to have there are 3 daughters in the family. 3 daughters?
Yes.
Yeah, 3 daughters in the family. They're not kids, small kids anymore.
Sure.
They need some space. I want to keep them on the same floor that their parents are on, and that's the only way I can get that benefit and have them something that is reasonable. I'm not asking for a lot.
You don't doubt Bruce's ability to design something that meets all of those.
Yes, I
Bills.
do, on without being on the second floor, and he'll tell you that himself.
Bruce.
That would be the real question with respect to criteria number 2. Is there a way to add the extra 3 feet on the second floor and still achieve the benefit but not infringe upon the pyramid law or the height restriction?
It doesn't stop there. You still have to balance. You have to, having me demonstrated the benefit, having me demonstrated that there's no negative impact on the neighborhood, having me demonstrated all the things that I've shown you, the burden has now shifted to this board. You may not want to hear it, but the burden has now shifted to this board to demonstrate that there's something in my proposal that has a greater negative impact on the neighborhood or the environment. That is your burden now.
All right, Bruce, come on up. I think I have a solution. So look, now I'm looking at your diagram on A200 where you show the pyramid line.
Wait, can we put that up?
Luke, are you sharing your
This is-
screen?
I'm not sharing my screen.
Actually, I put that up there. I don't know if it's helpful
Oh.
or if you can see it.
Oh yeah, Chick, you did that? Go down, scroll down.
Which figure?
A200, please. Last page. No, not last page, but down.
A200.
Yeah, right there. Okay. Scroll up. Give me the top drawing. Scroll down. Yeah, right there. Okay, look. So we are standing on the north side of the property. We're looking south. Yes? Okay. And we see the pyramid line on the left side of our drawing, which is the east property line. And we carry that up, and we actually see that it more affects what? Daughter's bedroom 3 than it does daughter's bedroom 1. And I think we can agree that potentially using good architectural space planning, maybe that section just in front of daughter's bedroom 1 gets pulled out further north, and we don't need to expand daughter's bedroom 3, and we don't need a pyramid relief.
May I say something?
Sure.
Of course.
I understand what you're proposing, but then again, you're getting back into the cost implications of requiring a foundation, the excavating, and all of that, because the further out you project northward, then the cantilever rule becomes null and void at that point.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I wouldn't think that we'd be cantilevering that distance, although we could cantilever pretty far given the length of the north-south axis on this house. I would think that maybe you would have some beautifully designed pilotis supporting it. The point is not to design it today, but to just all agree that it is possible.
No, it's not possible. Who's saying that? You tell me why.
Yeah, it's not gonna work. Just, it would just be an inefficient, I'm not exactly sure how we would expand 3 bedrooms in the way, in the manner you're
You're
proposing.
essentially cutting this off
Right.
at this point, so all of this is not.
So, yeah, what I think you would do is you would take daughter's bathroom 1 and that whole section there, the closet and the powder room, and maybe, I don't know, you know, that's, I don't know. Bruce is the architect on this one. But it's to Mark's point that there's potentially other ways that this could be planned that don't need the pyramid variance.
I don't agree.
Okay.
So we'll give you.
Fine. But do any of the board members have some questions? Do you have questions, Joyce, or?
No, I don't think so at this point.
Julia, do you have any questions on
Not
this
anymore this
application?
evening. We've heard a great deal of testimony, some of which needs to be digested and considered, in my opinion. I'd like to, if this is going to be adjourned this evening, or, I think that this is the time.
Okay, so would it be your suggestion to adjourn for all purposes? The applicant may want to adjourn for decision. What would be your viewpoint?
I think that there's some materials that are still outstanding, so wouldn't we be adjourning for all purposes,
Okay.
rather than closing at this point?
What's the list of materials that you would want, just so we have?
Foundation plan
Okay.
section showing the connections between existing garage slab and proposed slab, any sort of structural connections, posts.
We can submit that in writing.
Luke, you would also ask for the CHA line to be shown vertically on the cross-section.
That's right.
Yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem at all.
What's your feeling about adjourning for all purposes, or?
I don't know. I think we should adjourn for all purposes.
Yeah, could you stop screen sharing at this time?
I can't hear her.
She wants to stop screen sharing.
There you go.
Thank you.
Now we can see you, Julia.
You're welcome.
Well, the only thing I would add is that everything that you've asked for is just documentation. Obviously, it's ultimately up to you, but I would like to move this case along, and I would prefer that you adjourn it only for written submissions and to August 8th, with a possible decision on the 8th or the meeting after.
I
The-
think
the
what we're
only-
suggesting is, I'm sorry, you.
The only point I was gonna make, I certainly understand Council's point, but I would think if the written submission come in, it may raise questions, so to keep it open for all purposes, we'll allow the board to go through those questions should they come up.
It's fine.
I'm not
Okay,
gonna
so-
argue that point too heavily.
I'll motion to adjourn
Did the board
for all
open this
purposes.
for public comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry, thank you, Alex. Is there anybody here for public comment, or anybody available on Zoom? Do you have access to that? If anybody's old school, old world. Okay, so let me, motion to adjourn. Via Zoom? Okay.
Not even necessarily.
Can they text us the question?
What?
Mhm.
Yeah, but I know, I'm trying to.
They could do the chat thing. Yeah, but they could do the chat and. I
Oh,
think
here we go. This is Dr. Alam. I think he's on another application.
here on this application,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes, it's me. Can you hear me at all, or you can't?
We can hear you. Which application are you addressing?
The first application, I assume you adjourned this case now, right?
Which case?
The case that you were discussing for the past hour and a half, has it been adjourned or not yet?
No,
I-
it's
I didn't mean to
1430 Meadow
interrupt.
Lane?
Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Did you mean to address the board with respect to 1430 Meadow Lane?
No, sir. No. I just, I thought that you were asking if there's anybody for other cases.
No, I think you might be on the White Street case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we haven't arrived at that yet.
Okay. I'll continue to hold. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem, thank you. Okay, so I'll motion in case number 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane, to adjourn for all purposes. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
So moving forward to case number 3157, Sakura Realty, 131 Flying Point is the applicant here.
Mr. Chairman, as they're setting up, I just wanted to let you know that I looked at the agenda. There's no further wetlands, CHA, FEMA, or any other such cases on, and would like to drop off the call if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Chick. So you're signing off. So Chick Voorhees is signing off from the meeting, and thank you.
Good night, Chick.
Good night, thank you, everyone. Take care now. See you next month.
Could you identify yourself for the record?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Todd O'Connell, architect doing business at 1200 Veterans Highway, Hauppauge, New York, architect for Sakura Realty. Okay, just to refresh everyone's memory, I was here last month, and we were asking for some relief on a second front yard along Downs Path for a 3-car garage. We've explained why this was necessary and why the variance was needed. We had a discussion with the board, and we were asked if there was a way to minimize the request, or at least the bulk of the request that was before the board. And in doing so, we went from a 3-car garage to a 2-car garage, maintained the same front yard request that we were proposing to Downs Path, which is 56.92, but that was specifically for the 2-car garage. We further reduced the dimension of the mudroom to be consistent with the variance relief that was approved, I guess probably a year and a half ago from the prior owner, which was for a new residence. So we have a reduced request before the board. Again, the request that was originally proposed is now specific for only the 2-car portion of the garage, and the mudroom portion that was before you last time has now been reduced to be the same setback relief that was approved by the board when there was a new residence before you. So that's what we had submitted. We really feel this was the best application to put forward. I feel we've minimized it dramatically. With that said, I would love to also include all the past testimony on the prior month, and with all that, love to answer any questions this board may have.
Do any board members have questions? Julia, do you have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I very much appreciate the reduction in the request. I think that it's clear that the applicant has listened and heard the testimony at our last meeting.
Luke, do you have any questions?
I do. I'm just trying to find the old plan. I think I just got it. So Todd, let me just make sure I understood you correctly. Your distance from the garage doors to the property line, I'm having a hard time seeing it on my screen, used to be like 36, 37 feet. Is it the same? Did the location of the garage doors, I guess, stay the same relative to the property
They
line?
were, but it's actually the original request, which was 56.92.
Okay. Okay. And so what you have done is reduced the, I guess, surface area.
The bulk, yes.
The bulk, the massing, and I do think it's a nice adjustment.
Yes, thank you.
Here. Stepping it back off the face of the house, shifting in the mudroom a little bit. It's nice.
Thank you.
I don't have any other questions.
Joyce, do you have any questions?
No, I think the proportions in the scaled down proposal look much better in terms of compliance with the previous request.
No, it's what we asked for. It's good. I don't have any problems with this. If it's okay with the board, I would motion to, we'll hear
I just
public
don't know if
comment.
there's any
Yeah, is
public
anybody
comment.
in the public who wishes to be heard? So I would motion to close it for decision, if that's okay with everybody. So I'll motion to close, case number 3157, Secura Realty LLC, 131 Flying Point. Close it for decision. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
Sean.
very much. Have a great evening.
So we'll move on to our next case, which is case number 3163, 74 White Street. Is the applicant here?
Was that the gentleman on the?
Yes.
So,
So why don't, we'll have a second call on it if he brings back in. He's coming in?
It just takes a second.
Okay.
There he is, I see it.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, technology is not my friend sometimes. Should I go ahead and present my case?
Yes, can you identify yourself first?
Rosen.
No, from last. The house because of the COVID, fear of COVID, in which the second story into an apartment. Subsequent to that, I went to the building department to get a C of O since I wasn't making any changes basically, and I was told that the fire marshal needs me to get an architect or an engineer to design the second floor, even though I'm not making any changes, and provide diagram for whatever fire safety. I met actually with the fire marshal myself and asked him, just tell me what it is because I'm not making any changes in any walls. And he said, no, the architect or engineer will do it because they know the codes. My job is to enforce it. So I spent the fortune, I got an engineer, I did everything, and he submitted the plans to the fire marshal, and all he needed basically is a central alarm system. The fire marshal decided, no, we need to in the second floor, which is very cool, and the building is made of, I'm sorry?
We're having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
We're having trouble hearing you as,
Dr. Alam,
yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing him.
it may be that you need to appear in person, or
Can you
or
hear
at
me
least
better
at a,
now?
Dr. Alam, it may be at least that you need to appear at a
Let me
home
see if I can
computer
do
or
it
in
through the-
person.
Yeah, hello?
It's a computer with Wi-Fi.
Right, well, that's.
Hello?
Dr.
Hello?
Alam, our connection is not clear, so you may need a connection with Wi-Fi to present to the board. We're not gonna have an adequate record of what you're saying. You're breaking up. And
You cannot hear me at all.
you're breaking up, the Wi-Fi connection is unclear. I think you need to reschedule this. We need to adjourn this to August 8th, when you can hopefully appear in public or appear via a computer connection with Wi-Fi.
I don't have many choices, do I?
Well, you could drive here now.
Okay, I'm gonna make it very brief, and I'm gonna be very loud so you can hear me.
We can't really, we can't hear you with any real consistency, so we're not gonna have a good record of what you've said, and it's just really not an adequate way to have a public hearing. So why don't we adjourn this until August 8th? Can you appear in person on August 8th?
I think he's frozen again.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna motion to adjourn. Adjourn case number 3163, 74 White Street until August 8th.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Julia, you in favor? Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you,
I'm sorry about it though, because I appreciate that he waited his time,
Who's
but
trying?
I know, ma'am, I had a meeting, and I've been like running late, and finally I had to get out of the house, so I'm sorry for that, but
Dr. Alam, we're adjourning this until August 8th.
that's fine, sir, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for trying. Our next matter is case number 3165, 107 Woolley Street. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
He took my appendix out about 20 years ago, Dr. Alam. Yeah, still here.
I think you have to recuse.
He saved my life. I'll give him anything.
You can go ahead, just identify yourself for the record, please.
I'm just trying to share my screen for the presentation.
Good evening, board members. My name is Giro Gambana with Latitude 41 Planning and Engineering, and I'm here to discuss a proposed garage addition to the property 107 Woolley along John Street. Here you'll see the proposed addition that we are asking for. It'll be on the southern side of the property along John Street, and we have this image here to show what the proposed addition would look like and how it relates to the neighborhood. So here we have, to the left, you'll see 91 Woolley Street, which is directly across the street from 107 Woolley, and is very similar to what we are looking or asking for. To the right, you'll see 194 Elm Street, which also has a detached small garage. This is 194 Elm, but the garage entrance or access is from Pelletrew. To the bottom, you'll see 26 John Street and 30 Pelletrew Street, which has a detached garage as well in the side and rear yard. And the immediate neighbor.
Wait, could you just slow down? I just want to look at 26 John and 30 Pelletreau.
Yep, the bottom ones.
You're saying that these are all corner lots with.
These are the bottom two are not corner lots. They just
Okay.
have the garage in the rear or side yard and very close to the property line.
Okay.
194 Elm, that is a corner lot. That one's along Elm Street, but the access to the garage is on Pelletrew.
Understood.
115 Woolley is the immediate neighbor to the property of 107 Woolley, and although it doesn't have a garage, does have two driveways for parking. This is the existing dwelling. The existing dwelling, we are not touching any of the conditions on the property. It does sit on an 11,176.8 square foot lot for the Van Brunt and Gooddale subdivision and falls in an R7.5 zone. So here we have a historic map for 107 Woolley and 91 Woolley on the blue arrow. And this is on the 1916 historic map for Belcher and Hyde. And this is to show that this property has been around for a while and is very historic, although not landmarked. And to the right, you'll see the survey to get a better understanding of the property. The existing driveway is on the east side along Woolley. And as you can see, no access on John Street currently. So the proposed work.
Could you go back? I don't get it. On the 1916 map, are we saying this house is dating back to 1916?
Yes.
Can
This
you,
and this and 91 Woolley. So yeah, the N Wilbert, that's 107 Woolley, and I can't quite make that out, but Shandis, that one is 91 Woolley, and this is dating back from 1916.
Okay, so that's showing a house, but not the pool house in the back or the
Not the
guest
pool
house?
house or any of the work done in the rear.
Okay.
for
At
both
some point,
properties.
show us when the guest house, pool house was built.
Got it. So this is what the existing conditions are stated before, and the proposed work that we are asking for is a 266 square foot lot along the southern property line on John Street, which will require an 18-foot setback, and that would require the variance, which standards, since it is a corner lot, is standard for a 35-foot setback. To the right, we have a 2004 aerial view showing that the driveway did appear in 2004. There was one there, same as 91 Woolley, however, was removed.
Wait, could you expand that? Maybe.
Yeah, it's very blurry. The aerial images have the driveway to all previous to 2004. However, we couldn't reproduce this due to the poor quality going back then.
So, in that illustration, it looks like it's going back to the current guest house, pool
Right.
house,
The driveway,
the driveway.
yes.
So was that guest house a garage?
No. Well, we aren't sure. Based on what we could see here, it looks like it was just kind of just where you parked the car and had access to, but we don't believe so.
You don't believe the
Yeah.
cars went inside, so what was it?
That we are not too sure of. Based on the record, we couldn't really figure that out.
So what year is this photo?
2004.
But the applicant purchased
Bought
the
it
property in
in-
2007, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So were you able to find building permit records for when that structure was built? Or what does the C of O say it is?
The C of O, I believe, has it as a guest house. If I'm
Okay.
not mistaken. I can double check that though.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it's
let's just-
interesting.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, it's just interesting to note that there was no driveway on Woolley.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
continue, please.
So the variances we're asking for is a 17-foot variance, stated before, for the required 35-foot foot setback that is needed since it's a front yard, as well as an accessory structure in the front yard, due to this being on the corner lot. This will not create any undesirable character in the neighborhood. It's not self-created, there will be no environmental impact, and it will only increase the lot coverage by 266 square feet, making it 2,122 from the 1,856, much less than the 3,065, that is the max.
3,065 is your max allowed lot coverage?
Yes.
You're including the pool in that?
I can double check here. Yes,
What's the lot size?
11,176.8, or 77 rounded, yes.
What's the, refresh my memory what the calculation is for lot coverage? How do you arrive at that number? It's lot size times,
It's 14% of the lot size plus 1,500 square feet.
for lot coverage or for GFA?
No, that's lot.
For lot
Lot coverage? Alex, does that check out for you,
That's
that
correct.
figure? Okay,
May I continue?
please do.
So here are the elevations. This would follow suit with the typical Hamptons detached garage, cedar shingle. The same thing with the roof. We will have an access. On the right side of the garage, just to go to the patio and to the existing dwelling. In regards to the pyramid law, the proposed garage does not pierce that, so there will be no issue there. And we did decide to look at alternatives. We looked at having a carport where the existing driveway is. However, we do believe that this change of character to the house would not be acceptable to other village boards. We also did look at building a garage on the existing driveway. However, that would need a much larger side yard variance due to the location. We also have discussed with the neighbors at 91, the immediate neighbors, 91 Woolley and 45 John Street, how they feel on the project. There's no objections. Mr. Stinchcombe from 91 Woolley has been there for over 35 years. He does remember the property having the driveway that was previously there, and has no objections to that. And that'll be all.
Just for
Thank
the
you.
record, by the way, this is not part of your written submission as of now, so could you send this to the building department so that
The
we have
alternative?
this? We don't have that.
Okay, got it, yeah. we
I'm
can
not
send
sure
that.
why not, but we don't have that.
Okay,
I
You
do,
have it?
I do have it in
From
the
Dropbox?
Dropbox, yes.
Okay, I don't have, when I picked up my written copies, I didn't have it, so we'll get it from Dropbox if we can, but
Okay.
if, we'll work it out with the building department. We'll find out ways for everybody to get copies.
got it, thank you. That'll conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Do any board members have any questions?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions. I'm in receipt that I picked up today, so not all of my fellow board members may have the same benefit of having seen this. But there are 5 form letters that were signed by neighbors in support. But there's also a handwritten letter that was delivered to the building department yesterday to Mr. Wallach from a neighbor at 67 Woolley Street, and it's handwritten. Did anybody else see this letter who was on the board?
I only have the support.
Okay, so
Yeah, it's not in the Dropbox.
So the homeowner's letter says, she asked that it would be read into the record. I don't know who, I mean, I'm happy to read it. But she asked that it be read into the record today. And she describes, having been a neighbor in the area for quite some time, about the closing of the original entrance driveway on John Street and converting the garage into an office. And that she is objecting to the idea that the application will create a second curb cut onto the street, and that usually in this neighborhood, if a corner lot does not have two entrances, and clearly, when we heard the presentation, it wasn't clear that that had been a garage that had been converted, and now there's a need for another garage. I'm curious, given the size of the lot and the size of the neighborhood, why the applicant wouldn't consider converting the existing office back to its original purpose.
The homeowner just not, oh, I'm sorry. Somebody. The
Go
homeowners.
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. The homeowners aren't looking to alter the pool house. It's what came with it. They are looking for a garage. It's not really just something we're looking to do.
How far does the carport extend to the property line on the north? Would that require a variance, or just architecture would be for it?
It would require a variance. Off the top of my head, if I'm not mistaken, that would be going in, because the side yard requires. One second. 10 feet, yeah, it would go in and 5 feet. 5 feet into the side yard setback.
So it would be 5 feet from the side yard instead of 10?
It's a little bit more than 5. I'd say maybe 6.5, 7.
Okay.
So 3, 4 feet from the property line.
Which looks better to you? I'm leaning against the second curb cut and having 3 structures, you know, in one area if possible. So I'm looking at what are the other feasible alternatives so that the applicant does have the garage space or shelter for their car. And I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to accomplish that so that the garage space is in a location even closer to the house, maybe more convenient to the entrance to the house. So, I mean, logistically, that looks more palatable to me than putting a third structure in the backyard and creating a new curb cut. But again, that may need some review by the ARB.
Right. Can we see a photo of the existing house?
There's the ones we have on file. I don't have access to other ones, but there is the aerials and then this one.
Okay, so there's already a wraparound porch there, but it returns with a hip to the front facade of the house. I think I'm with Mark that may be something worth exploring. The ARB will obviously have some things to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have a good first draft maybe of what that would look like.
Yeah.
My recommendation, and I'm not the ARB, right, would to maybe not make that porch facade so continuous and find a way to step the carport back. Is this?
Yeah, because you have a side entrance to the house on the north side.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So I'd like you to explore the
Yeah.
other feasible way of accomplishing the same benefit. And I think that area north of the house deserves a little bit more attention as to whether or not that's a feasible way for the applicant to create the benefit they want.
Okay. Will do.
Chair, could I get the name of the neighbor that she read the letter? Can you get the name of that neighbor?
It's in the
I'm
file,
sorry,
I can send it to you.
I can't hear them.
Just if you come back to the idea of really wanting to do something on John Street, let me ask you, what was the thinking of having that as a third structure on the property and not trying to incorporate it into the existing structure back there?
What you're saying in regards to connecting it to the existing dwelling?
No,
The
guest house.
existing accessory studio.
Oh, well, they like to keep it, that's how they purchase house, it's just what they would want, to keep it as a office kind of pool house.
No, I'm not saying change the use of that
saying
building.
connecting it?
Connecting the proposed garage and existing studio as one building.
We can definitely look into that. I think we were talking about just demolition, we have to tear down a wall and connect it. However, that is something we can study in one of the alternatives.
It changes the gross floor area ratio.
Just the pool equipment.
The building department doesn't allow combined accessory structures to take advantage of the GFA deduction for garages.
So if it was combined to the guest house, then it would
The
be
entirety
GFA?
would count towards GFA, and there would be no deduction. I don't know if that,
Well, right
how
now,
that
the
affects
pool
it.
house and the guest house is counted toward GFA.
But the garage would not be.
Would not be, so, okay, so we'd have to look at whether or not that somehow bumps you above the GFA.
Yeah, so there is currently pool equipment along that south side of that office, or the accessory structure. And that may need to be moved and may require a variance.
Okay, I would say don't worry about exploring that in light of Alex's comments and the existing pool equipment. I'm satisfied that that might be the right spot for it if it's on John Street. But to Mark's point, I think maintaining the access on Woolley and having a carport potentially makes better use of the site and your north property line, which is kind of like a dead space right now anyway. But just take another pass at the architecture of it.
Okay, will do.
And also, I think you're pulling cars in there right now anyway, on the north side, because that's your existing driveway.
Yeah.
We're just looking at, is there another
Alternative.
feasible alternative that's.
Yeah, we could definitely look into it a little deeper than what we had.
And then also let us have a little more background on how the guest house, pool house was created, what it was in 2004 and what you have or what you can find with respect to certificates of occupancy. Do you have any questions? So why don't we motion to close this for all purposes?
I just want to make sure there's nobody.
Anybody from the public wishing to be heard? Okay, so why don't we close case number 3165, 107 Woolley Street for all purposes. That's my motion. Can I have a second?
Mr. Jones, was it to close for all purposes
I'm
or
sorry,
to adjourn for
to
all
adjourn
purposes?
for all purposes. Can I have a second?
Second.
Are you
Yeah.
here for an application? Are you here for
And
a
all in
particular
favor?
application?
Aye.
Julia?
Aye.
You missed it all, because we're gonna, okay, I'm gonna motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
There is just one matter, and this is
Sorry.
actually just an amendment. The board previously approved 44 Hillcrest Lane, I think you'll recall. And at that time, that was subject to one amendment, if I can just put on the record what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So originally, the board approved the application, and on page 6 of the original draft, it was that there be screening of an evergreen variety to be installed and maintained by the applicant along the eastern and western borders of the property, running to the edge of the road at Miller Road. A question was raised that that might affect sight lines, so during the hearing, an amendment was proposed to say instead that the screening would be installed and maintained by the applicant along the eastern and western borders of the property, running to the right-of-way at Miller Road and Hillcrest Avenue, so as to ensure that there wouldn't be any impediment to the sight lines. I've made those changes. I have a copy of the proposed amended decision, and if that now meets with the board's approval, I would ask if the remaining members of the board who appeared, which were Mr. Farren, Ms. Jufra, and the chairman, Ms. Stevenson, having stepped off the board, if that's agreeable, I would ask if the remaining
And-
members of the board could
and
approve it
Julia?
as amended. And Ms. McCormick, I'm so sorry, I didn't see
She's
you in
behind
the
you.
frame,
Yeah.
could approve and authorize the chairman to sign the amended decision. So I would just ask if there could be a motion to do so.
Can you make the motion?
I can't make a motion, I'm not a board member, but the motion that I would propose would be that the board approve the decision as amended based upon the prior determination of the board, and thereupon authorize the chairman to sign off on the decision as amended.
That was a mouthful. What do I want to say again?
Is there a motion in accord with what council just placed? on the
Okay,
record?
so I'll make a motion in accord with our council and approval of the decision as written, allowing the chairman to sign off on his approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in
And
favor?
then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we'll motion to close the public hearing July 11th, 2023 of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What's
Aye.
the adjourn date on this case?
August 8th.
August 8th.